Yet she meant well, and we must consider the spirit of the offering.
"What good are marigold wreaths when one is on the rubbish heap?" said the Jackal, hunting for fleas, but keeping one wary eye on his protector of the poor.
"True, but they have not yet begun to make the rubbish heap that shall carry me. 5 times have I seen the river draw back from the village and make new land at the foot of the street. 5 times have I seen the village rebuilt on the banks, and I shall see it built yet 5 times more. I am no faithless fish-hunting gavial, I, at Kasi today and Prayag tomorrow, as the saying is, but the true and constant watcher of the ford. It is not for nothing, child, that the village bears my name, and he who watches long, as the saying is, shall at last have his reward."
"I have watched long, very long, nearly all my life, and my reward has been bites and blows," said the Jackal.
"Ho, ho, ho!" roared the adjutant. "In August was the Jackal born, the rains fell in September. Now such a fearful flood as this, says he, I can't remember."
There is one very unpleasant peculiarity about the adjutant. At uncertain times he suffers from acute attacks of the fidgets, or cramp in his legs, and though he is more virtuous to behold than any of the cranes, who are all immensely respectable, he flies off into wild, cripple-stilt war-dances, half opening his wings and bobbing his bald head up and down, while for reasons best known to himself he is very careful to time his worst attacks with his nastiest remarks. At the last word of his song he came to attention again, 10 times adjutanter than before. The Jackal winced, though he was full 3 seasons old, but you cannot resent an insult from a person with a beak a yard long, and the power of driving it like a javelin. The adjutant was a most notorious coward, but the Jackal was worse.
"We must live before we can learn," said the Mugger, "and there is this to say. Little jackals are very common, child, but such a mugger as I am is not common. For all that, I am not proud, since pride is destruction. But take notice, it is fate, and against fate no one who swims or walks or runs should say anything at all. I am well contented with fate. With good luck, a keen eye, and the custom of considering whether a creek or a backwater has an outlet to it ere you ascend, much may be done."
"Once I heard that even the protector of the poor made a mistake," said the Jackal viciously.
"True, but there my fate helped me. It was before I had come to my full growth, before the last famine but 3, by the right and left of Gunga. How full used the streams to be in those days! Yes, I was young and unthinking, and when the flood came, who so pleased as I? A little made me very happy then. The village was deep in flood, and I swam above the gort and went far inland, up to the rice fields, and they were deep in good mud. I remember also a pair of bracelets, glass they were, and troubled me not a little, that I found that evening. Yes, glass bracelets, and, if my memory serves me well, a shoe. I should have shaken off both shoes, but I was hungry. I learned better later. Yes, and so I fed and rested me. But when I was ready to go to the river again, the flood had fallen, and I walked through the mud of the main street. Who but I? Came out all my people, priests and women and children, and I looked upon them with benevolence. The mud is not a good place to fight in. Said a boatman, 'Get axes and kill him, for he is the mugger of the ford.' 'Not so,' said the Brahmin. 'Look, he is driving the flood before him. He is the godling of the village.' Then they threw many flowers at me, and by happy thought one led a goat across the road."
"How good, how very good is goat," said the Jackal.
"Hairy, too hairy, and when found in the water, more than likely to hide a cross-shaped hook. But that goat I accepted, and went down to the gort in great honour. Later, my fate sent me the boatman who had desired to cut off my tail with an axe. His boat grounded upon an old shoal which you would not remember." "We are not all jackals here," said the adjutant. "Was it the shoal made where the stone boat sank in the year of the great drought, a long shoal that lasted 3 floods?" "There were 2, said the Mugger. "An upper and a lower shoal." "Aye, I forgot. A channel divided them and later dried up again," said the adjutant, who prided himself on his memory. "On the lower shoal my well-wisher's craft grounded. He was sleeping in the bows, and, half awake, leaped over to his waist. No, it was no more than to his knees, to push off. His empty boat went on and touched again below the next reach, as the river ran then. I followed, because I knew men would come out to drag it ashore." "And did they do so?" said the Jackal, a little awe-stricken. This was hunting on a scale that impressed him. "There and lower down they did. I went no further, but that gave me 3 in one day. Well-fed manjis, boatmen, all, and except in the case of the last, then I was careless, never a cry to warn those on the bank." "Ah, noble sport! But what cleverness and great judgment it requires," said the Jackal. "Not cleverness, child, but only thought. A little thought in life is like salt upon rice, as the boatmen say, and I have thought deeply always. The Gavial, my cousin, the fish-eater, has told me how hard it is for him to follow his fish, and how one fish differs from the other, and how he must know them all, both together and apart. I say that is wisdom. But, on the other hand, my cousin, the Gavial, lives among his people. My people do not swim in companies, with their mouths out of the water, as Rewa does. Nor do they constantly rise to the surface of the water and turn over on their sides, like Mohu and Little Chapter. Nor do they gather in shoals after the flood, like Bachua and Chilwa. All are very good eating," said the adjutant, clattering his beak. "So my cousin says, and makes a great to-do over hunting them. But they do not climb the banks to escape his sharp nose. My people are otherwise. Their life is on the land, in the houses, among the cattle. I must know what they do and what they are about to do, and, adding the tail to the trunk, as the saying is, I make up the whole elephant. Is there a green branch and an iron ring hanging over a doorway? The old Mugger knows that a boy has been born in that house, and must some day come down to the gort to play. Is a maiden to be married? The old Mugger knows, for he sees the men carry gifts back and forth. And she too comes down to the gort to bathe before her wedding, and he is there. Has the river changed its channel and made new land where there was only sand before? The Mugger knows." "Now, of what use is that knowledge?" said the Jackal. "The river has shifted even in my little life." Indian rivers are nearly always moving about in their beds, and will shift sometimes as much as 2 or 3 miles in a season, drowning the fields on one bank and spreading good silt on the other. "There is no knowledge so useful," said the Mugger, "for new land means new quarrels. The Mugger knows. Oh, the Mugger knows. As soon as the water is drained off, he creeps up the little creeks that men think would not hide a dog, and there he waits. Presently comes a farmer saying he will plant cucumbers here and melons there, in the new land that the river has given him. He feels the good mud with his bare toes. Anon comes another, saying he will put onions and carrots and sugar-cane in such and such places. They meet as boats adrift meet, and each rolls his eye at the other under the big blue turban. The old Mugger sees and hears. Each calls the other brother, and they go to mark out the boundaries of the new land. The Mugger hurries with them from point to point, shuffling very low through the mud. Now they begin to quarrel. Now they say hot words. Now they pull turbans. Now they lift up their lathis, clubs, and at last one falls backward into the mud and the other runs away. When he comes back, the dispute is settled, as the iron-bound bamboo of the loser witnesses. Yet they are not grateful to the Mugger. No, they cry murder, and their families fight with sticks 20 aside. My people are good people, upland Jats, Malwais of the Bet. They do not give blows for sport, and when the fight is done, The old mugger waits far down the river, out of sight of the village, behind the kikar scrub yonder. Then come they down, my broad-shouldered Jats, 8 or 9 together under the stars, bearing the dead man upon a bed. They are old men with grey beards and voices as deep as mine. They light a little fire, how well I know that fire, and they drink tobacco, and they nod their heads together forward in a ring or sideways toward the dead man upon the bank. They say the English law will come with a rope for this matter, and that such a man's family will be ashamed, because such a man must be hanged in the great square of the jail. Then say the friends of the dead, let him hang. And the talk is all to do over again, once, twice, 20 times in the long night. Then says one at last, the fight was a fair fight. Let us take blood money, a little more than is offered by the slayer, and we will say no more about it. Then do they haggle over the blood money, for the dead was a strong man, leaving many sons. Yet before Amradvela, sunrise, they put the fire to him a little, as the custom is, and the dead man comes to me, and he says no more about it. Aha, my children, the mugger knows, the mugger knows. And my Malwa Jats are a good people. They are too close, too narrow in the hand for my crop, croaked the adjutant. They waste not the polish on the cow's horn, as the saying is, and again, who can glean after a Malwai? Ah, I glean them, said the mugger. Now, in Calcutta of the South in the old days, the adjutant went on, everything was thrown into the streets, and we picked and chose. Those dainty seasons. But today they keep their streets as clean as the outside of an egg, and my people fly away. To be clean is one thing. To dust, sweep, and sprinkle 7 times a day wearies the very gods themselves. There was a down-country jackal had it from a brother who told me that in Calcutta of the South all the jackals were as fat as otters in the rains, said the jackal, his mouth watering at the bare thought of it. Ah, but the white-faces are there, the English, and they bring dogs from somewhere down the river in boats, big fat dogs, to keep those same jackals lean, said the adjutant. They are, then, as hard-hearted as these people? I might have known. Neither earth, sky, nor water shows charity to a jackal. I saw the tents of a white-face last season, after the rains, and I also took a new yellow bridle to eat. The white-faces do not dress their leather in the proper way. It made me very sick. That was better than my case, said the adjutant. When I was in my 3rd season, a young and a bold bird, I went down to the river where the big boats come in. The boats of the English are thrice as big as this village. He has been as far as Delhi, and says all the people there walk on their heads, muttered the jackal. The mugger opened his left eye and looked keenly at the adjutant. It is true, the big bird insisted. A liar only lies when he hopes to be believed. No one who had not seen those boats could believe this truth. That is more reasonable, said the mugger. And then? From the insides of this boat they were taking out great pieces of white stuff, which in a little while turned to water. Much split off and fell about on the shore, and the rest they swiftly put into a house with thick walls. But a boatman, who laughed, took a piece no larger than a small dog and threw it to me. All my people swallow without reflection, and that piece I swallowed as is our custom. Immediately I was afflicted with an excessive cold, which, beginning in my crop, ran down to the extreme end of my toes, and deprived me even of speech, while the boatman laughed at me. Never have I felt such cold. I danced in my grief and amazement till I could recover my breath, and then I danced and cried out against the falseness of this world, and the boatmen derided me till they fell down. The chief wonder of the matter, setting aside that marvellous coldness, was that there was nothing at all in my crop when I had finished my lamentings. The adjutant had done his very best to describe his feelings after swallowing a 7-pound lump of Wenham Lake ice off an American ice ship in the days before Calcutta made her ice by machinery. But as he did not know what ice was, and as the mugger and the jackal knew rather less, the tale missed fire. Anything, said the mugger, shutting his left eye again. Anything is possible that comes out of a boat thrice the size of Mugger-Gort. My village is not a small one."
There was a whistle overhead on the bridge, and the Delhi mail slid across, all the carriages gleaming with light, and the shadows faithfully following along the river. It clanked away into the dark again, but the Mugger and the Jackal were so well used to it that they never turned their heads.
"Is that anything less wonderful than a boat thrice the size of Mugger-Gort?" said the bird, looking up. "I saw that built, child. Stone by stone I saw the bridge piers rise, and when the men fell off, they were wondrous sure-footed for the most part, but when they fell, I was ready. After the first pier was made, they never thought to look down the stream for the body to burn. There again I saved much trouble. There was nothing strange in the building of the bridge," said the Mugger. "But that which goes across pulling the roofed carts, that is strange," the adjutant repeated. "It is, past any doubt, a new breed of bullock. Some day it will not be able to keep its foothold up yonder, and will fall as the men did. The old Mugger will then be ready." The Jackal looked at the adjutant, and the adjutant looked at the Jackal. If there was one thing they were more certain of than another, it was that the engine was everything in the wide world except a bullock. The Jackal had watched it time and again from the aloe hedges by the side of the line, and the adjutant had seen engines since the first locomotive ran in India. But the Mugger had only looked up at the thing from below, where the brass dome seemed rather like a bullock's hump. Yes, a new kind of bullock,"
the Mugger repeated ponderously, to make himself quite sure in his own mind. And, "Certainly it is a bullock," said the Jackal.
"And again it might be—"
began the Mugger pettishly. "Certainly, most certainly," said the Jackal, without waiting for the other to finish.
"What?"
said the Mugger angrily, for he could feel that the others knew more than he did.
"What might it be? I never finished my words. You said it was a bullock."
"It is anything the protector of the poor pleases. I am his servant, not the servant of the thing that crosses the river."
"Whatever it is white-face work," said the adjutant, "and for my own part I would not lie out upon a place so near to it as this bar." "You do not know the English as I do," said the Mugger. "There was a white-face here when the bridge was built, and he would take a boat in the evenings and shuffle with his feet on the bottom boards and whisper, 'Is he here? Is he there? Bring me my gun.' I could hear him before I could see him, each sound that he made, creaking and puffing and rattling his gun up and down the river. As surely as I had picked up one of his workmen, and thus saved great expense in wood for the burning, so surely would he come down to the Gort and shout in a loud voice that he would hunt me and rid the river of me. The Mugger of Mugger-Gort, me! Children, I have swum under the bottom of his boat for hour after hour, and heard him fire his gun at logs, and when I was well sure he was wearied, I have risen by his side and snapped my jaws in his face. When the bridge was finished, he went away. All the English hunt in that fashion, except when they are hunted."
"Who hunts the white-faces?" yapped the Jackal excitedly.
"No one now, but I have hunted them in my time."
"I remember a little of that hunting. I was young then," said the adjutant, clattering his beak significantly.
"I was well established here. My village was being builded for the third time, as I remember, when my cousin, the Gavial, brought me word of rich waters above Benares. At first I would not go, for my cousin, who is a fish-eater, does not always know the good from the bad. But I heard my people talking in the evenings, and what they said made me certain."
"And what did they say?" the Jackal asked.
"They said enough to make me, the Mugger of Mugger-Gort, leave water and take to my feet. I went by night, using the littlest streams as they served me, but it was the beginning of the hot weather, and all the streams were low. I crossed dusty roads, I went through tall grass, I climbed hills in the moonlight. Even rocks did I climb, children, consider this well. I crossed the tail of Serhind, the waterless, before I could find the set of the little rivers that flow Gangaward. I was a month's journey from my own people and the river that I knew. That was very marvellous.
"What food on the way?" said the Jackal, who kept his soul in his little stomach, and was not a bit impressed by the Mugger's land travels.
That which I could find, cousin,
said the Mugger slowly, dragging each word. Now, you do not call a man a cousin in India unless you think you can establish some kind of blood relationship, and as it is only in old fairy tales that the Mugger ever marries a jackal, the Jackal knew for what reason he had been suddenly lifted into the Mugger's family circle. If they had been alone, he would not have cared, but the Adjutant's eyes twinkled with mirth at the ugly jest. "Assuredly, father, I might have known," said the Jackal. A Mugger does not care to be called a father of jackals, and the Mugger of Muggergort said as much, and a great deal more, which there is no use in repeating here. "The protector of the poor has claimed kinship. How can I remember the precise degree? Moreover, we eat the same food. He has said it," was the Jackal's reply. That made matters rather worse, for what the Jackal hinted at was that the Mugger must have eaten his food on that land march fresh, and fresh every day, instead of keeping it by him till it was in a fit and proper condition, as every self-respecting Mugger and most wild beasts do when they can. Indeed, one of the worst terms of contempt along the riverbed is eater of fresh meat. It is nearly as bad as calling a man a cannibal. "That food was eaten 30 seasons ago," said the Adjutant quietly. "If we talk for 30 seasons more, it will never come back. Tell us now, what happened when the good waters were reached after thy most wonderful land journey? If we listened to the howling of every jackal, the business of the town would stop, as the saying is." The Mugger must have been grateful for the interruption, because he went on with a rush.
"By the right and left of Gunga, when I came there, never did I see such waters."
"Were they better then than the big flood of last season?" said the Jackal.
"Better. That flood was no more than comes every 5 years. A handful of drowned strangers, some chickens, and a dead bullock in muddy water with cross-currents. But the season I think of, the river was low, smooth, and even, and as the Gavial had warned me, the dead English came down, touching each other. I got my girth in that season, my girth and my depth. From Agra by Ottawa, and the broad waters by Allahabad." "Oh, the eddy that set under the walls of the fort at Allahabad," said the Adjutant. "They came in there like widgeon to the reeds, and round they swung, thus." He went off into his horrible dance again, while the Jackal looked on enviously. He naturally could not remember the terrible year of the mutiny they were talking about. The Mugger continued. "Yes, by Allahabad, one lay still in the slack water and let 20 go by to pick one. And above all, the English were not cumbered with jewellery and nose-rings and anklets, as my women are nowadays. To delight in ornaments is to end with a rope for necklace, as the saying is. All the Muggers of all the rivers grew fat then, but it was my fate to be fatter than them all. The news was that the English were being hunted into the rivers, and by the right and left of Gunga we believed it was true. So far as I went south, I believed it to be true, and I went downstream beyond Mongir and the tombs that look over the river." "I know that place," said the Adjutant. "Since those days, Mongir is a lost city. Very few live there now." Thereafter, I worked upstream very slowly and lazily, and a little above Mongir there came down a boat full of white faces, alive. They were, as I remember, women, lying under a cloth spread over sticks and crying aloud. There was never a gun fired at us, the watchers of the fords, in those days. All the guns were busy elsewhere. We could hear them day and night inland, coming and going as the wind shifted. I rose up full before the boat, because I had never seen white faces alive, though I knew them well. Otherwise... A naked white child kneeled by the side of the boat, and stooping over, must needs try to trail his hands in the water. It is a pretty thing to see how a child loves running water. I had fed that day, but there was yet a little unfilled space within me. Still, it was for sport and not for food that I rose at the child's hands. They were so clear a mark that I did not even look when I closed. But they were so small that though my jaws rang true, I am sure of that. The child drew them up swiftly, unhurt. They must have passed between tooth and tooth, those small white hands. I should have caught him crosswise at the elbows, but, as I said, it was only for sport and desire to see new things that I rose at all. They cried out one after another in the boat, and presently I rose again to watch them. Their boat was too heavy to push over. They were only women, but he who trusts a woman will walk on duckweed in a pool, as the saying is. And by the right and left of Gunga, that is truth.
"Once a woman gave me some dried skin from a fish," said the Jackal. "I had hoped to get her baby, but horse food is better than the kick of a horse, as the saying is. What did thy woman do?"
She fired at me, with a short gun of a kind I have never seen before or since. 5 times, one after another.
The Mugger must have met with an old-fashioned revolver.
And I stayed open-mouthed and gaping, my head in the smoke. Never did I see such a thing. 5 times, as swiftly as I waved my tail, thus.
The Jackal, who had been growing more and more interested in the story, had just time to leap back as the long tail swung by like a scythe.
"Not before the 5th shot,"
said the Mugger, as though he had never dreamed of stunning one of his listeners.
"Not before the 5th shot did I sink, and I rose in time to hear a boatman telling all those white women that I was most certainly dead. One bullet had gone under a neck-plate of mine. I know not if it is there still, for the reason I cannot turn my head. Look and see, child. It will show that my tale is true."
"Aye," said the Jackal. "Shall an eater of old shoes, a bone-cracker, presume to doubt the word of the envy of the river? May my tail be bitten off by blind puppies if the shadows of such a thought has crossed my humble mind. The protector of the poor has condescended to inform me, his slave, that once in his life he has been wounded by a woman. That is sufficient, and I will tell the tale to all my children, asking for no proof."
Overmuch civility is sometimes no better than overmuch discourtesy, for, as the saying is, one can choke a guest with curds. I do not desire that any children of thine should know that the Mugger of Muggergort took his only wound from a woman. They will have much else to think of if they get their meat as miserably as does their father.
"It is forgotten long ago. It was never said. There never was a white woman, there was no boat, nothing whatever happened at all." The Jackal waved his brush to show how completely everything was wiped out of his memory, and sat down with an air.
"Indeed, very many things happened," said the Mugger,
beaten in his second attempt that night to get the better of his friend. Neither bore malice, however. Eat and be eaten was a fair law along the river, and the Jackal came in for his share of plunder when the Mugger had finished a meal.
"I left that boat and went upstream, and when I had reached Arra and the backwaters behind it, there were no more dead English. The river was empty for a while. Then came 1 or 2 dead, in red coats, and not English, but of one kind all, Hindus and Perbias, and 5 and 6 abreast, and at last, from Arra to the north beyond Agra, it was as though whole villages had walked into the water. They came out of little creeks one after another, as the logs come down in the rains. When the river rose, they rose also in companies from the shoals they had rested upon, and the falling flood dragged them with it across the fields and through the jungle by the long hair. All night, too, going north, I heard the guns, and by day the shod feet of men crossing fords, and that noise which a heavy cartwheel makes on sand under water, and every ripple brought more dead. At last even I was afraid, for I said, if this thing happen to men, how shall the Mugger of Muggergort escape? There were boats, too, that came up behind me without sails, burning continually, as the cotton boats sometimes burn, but never sinking.
"Ah," said the adjutant, "boats like those come to Calcutta of the south. They are tall and black. They beat up the water behind them with a tail, and they—"
"Are thrice as big as my village. My boats were low and white. They beat up the water on either side of them, and were no larger than the boats of one who speaks truth should be. They made me very afraid, and I left water and went back to this my river, hiding by day and walking by night when I could not find little streams to help me. I came to my village again, but I did not hope to see any of my people there. Yet they were ploughing and sowing and reaping and going to and fro in their fields as quietly as their own cattle.
"Was there still good food in the river?" said the Jackal.
"More than I had any desire for. Even I, and I do not eat mud, even I was tired and, as I remember, a little frightened of this constant coming down of the Silent Ones. I heard my people say in my village that all the English were dead, but those that came face down with the current were not English, as my people saw. Then my people said that it was best to say nothing at all, but to pay the tax and plough the land. After a long time the river cleared, and those that came down it had been clearly drowned by the floods, as I could well see. And, though it was not so easy then to get food, I was heartily glad of it. A little killing here and there is no bad thing, but even the mugger is sometimes satisfied, as the saying is."
"Marvellous, most truly marvellous," said the Jackal. "I am become fat through merely hearing about so much good eating. And afterward, what, if it be permitted to ask, did the protector of the poor do?"
I said to myself, and by the right and left of Gunga, I locked my jaws on that vow. I said I would never go roving any more. So I lived by the Gort, very close to my own people, and I watched over them year after year. And they loved me so much that they threw marigold wreaths at my head whenever they saw it lift. Yes, and my fate has been very kind to me, and the river is good enough to respect my poor and infirm presence. Only—"
"No one is all happy from his beak to his tail," said the adjutant sympathetically. "What does the mugger of Muggergort need more?"
"That little white child which I did not get,"
said the mugger with a deep sigh.
"He was very small, but I have not forgotten. I am old now, but before I die, it is my desire to try one new thing. It is true they are a heavy-footed, noisy and foolish people, and the sport would be small. But I remember the old days above Benares, and, if the child lives, he will remember still. It may be he goes up and down the bank of some river, telling how he once passed his hands between the teeth of the mugger of Muggergort, and lived to make a tale of it. My fate has been very kind, but that plagues me sometimes in my dreams, the thought of the little white child in the bows of that boat."
He yawned and closed his jaws.
"And now I will rest and think. Keep silent, my children, and respect the aged."
He turned stiffly and shuffled to the top of the sandbar, while the Jackal drew back with the adjutant to the shelter of a tree stranded on the end nearest the railway bridge. "That was a pleasant and profitable life," he grinned, looking up inquiringly at the bird who towered above him. "And not once, mark you, did he think fit to tell me where a morsel might have been left along the banks. Yet I have told him 100 times of good things wallowing downstream. How true is the saying, 'All the world forgets the Jackal and the barber when the news has been told.' Now he is going to sleep. Ah!" "How can a Jackal hunt with a mugger?" said the adjutant coolly. "Big thief and little thief. It is easy to say who gets the pickings." The Jackal turned, whining impatiently, and was going to curl himself up under the tree trunk when suddenly he cowered, and looked up through the draggled branches at the bridge almost above his head. "What now?" said the adjutant, opening his wings uneasily. "Wait till we see. The wind blows from us to them, but they are not looking for us, those 2 men." "Men, is it? My office protects me. All India knows I am holy." The adjutant, being a first-class scavenger, is allowed to go where he pleases, and so this one never flinched. "I am not worth a blow from anything greater than an old shoe," said the Jackal, and listened again. "Hark to that footfall," he went on. "That was no country leather, but the shod foot of a white-face. Listen again." Iron hits iron up there. It is a gun. Friend, those heavy-footed, foolish English are coming to speak with the mugger. Warn him, then. He was called protector of the poor by someone not unlike a starving jackal but a little time ago. Let my cousin protect his own hide. He has told me again and again there is nothing to fear from the white faces. They must be white faces. Not a villager of Muggergort would dare to come after him. See, I said it was a gun. Now, with good luck, we shall feed before daylight. He cannot hear well out of water, and this time it is not a woman. A shiny barrel glittered for a minute in the moonlight on the girders. The mugger was lying on the sandbar as still as his own shadow, his 4 feet spread out a little, his head dropped between them, snoring like a mugger. A voice on the bridge whispered, "It's an odd shot, straight down almost, but as safe as houses. Better try behind the neck. Golly, what a brute! The villagers will be wild if he's shot, though. He's the Deota, godling, of these parts." "Don't care a rap," another voice answered. "He took about 15 of my best coolies while the bridge was building, and it's time he was put a stop to. I've been after him in a boat for weeks. Stand by with a martini as soon as I've given him both barrels of this." "Oh, mind the kick, then. A double 4-bore's no joke." "That's for him to decide. Here goes." There was a roar like the sound of small cannon. The biggest sort of elephant rifle is not very different from some artillery, and a double streak of flame, followed by the stinging crack of a martini, whose long bullet makes nothing of a crocodile's plates. But the explosive bullets did the work. One of them struck just behind the mugger's neck, a hand's breadth to the left of the backbone, while the other burst a little lower down at the beginning of the tail. In 99 cases out of 100, a mortally wounded crocodile can scramble to deep water and get away. But the mugger of Muggergort was literally broken into 3 pieces. He hardly moved his head before the life went out of him, and he lay as flat as the jackal. "Thunder and lightning! Lightning and thunder!" said that miserable little beast. "Has the thing that pulls the covered carts over the bridge tumbled at last?" "It is no more than a gun," said the adjutant, though his very tail feathers quivered. "Nothing more than a gun. He is certainly dead. Here come the white faces." The 2 Englishmen had hurried down from the bridge and across to the sandbar, where they stood admiring the length of the mugger. Then a native with an axe cut off the big head, and 4 men dragged it across the spit. "The last time that I had my hand in a mugger's mouth," said one of the Englishmen, stooping down. He was the man who had built the bridge. "It was when I was about 5 years old, coming down the river by boat to Mongir. I was a mutiny baby, as they call it. Poor mother was in the boat, too, and she often told me how she fired Dad's old pistol at the beast's head. Well, you've certainly had your revenge on the chief of the clan, even if the gun has made your nose bleed. Hi, you boatman, haul that head up on the bank, and we'll boil it for the skull. The skin's too knocked about to keep. Come along to bed now. Well, this was worth sitting up all night for, wasn't it?" Curiously enough, the jackal and the adjutant made the very same remark not 3 minutes after the men had left. A Ripple Song. Once a ripple came to land, in the golden sunset burning, lapped against a maiden's hand by the ford returning. Dainty foot and gentle breast, here across be glad and rest. Maiden, wait, the ripple saith, wait a while, for I am death. Where my lover calls I go, shame it were to treat him coldly. 'Twas a fish that circled so, turning over boldly. Dainty foot and tender heart, wait the loaded ferry cart. Wait, ah wait, the ripple saith, maiden wait, for I am death. When my lover calls I haste, Dame Disdain was never wedded. Ripple, ripple round her waist, clear the current eddied. Foolish heart and faithful hand, little feet that touched no land. Far away the ripple sped, ripple, ripple, running red. The King's Ankus. These are the 4 that are never content, that have never been filled since the dews began. Jacala's mouth, and the glut of the kite, and the hands of the ape, and the eyes of man. A Jungle Saying. The King's Ankus. Kaa, the big rock python, had changed his skin for perhaps the 200th time since his birth, and Mowgli, who never forgot that he owed his life to Kaa for a night's work at Cold Lairs, which you may perhaps remember, went to congratulate him. Skin changing always makes a snake moody and depressed till the new skin begins to shine and look beautiful. Kaa never made fun of Mowgli any more, but accepted him, as the other jungle people did, for the master of the jungle, and brought him all the news that a python of his size would naturally hear. What Kaa did not know about the middle jungle, as they call it, the life that runs close to the earth or under it, the boulder, burrow, and the tree bole life, might have been written upon the smallest of his scales. That afternoon Mowgli was sitting in the circle of Kaa's great coils, fingering the flaked and broken old skin that lay all looped and twisted among the rocks, just as Kaa had left it. Kaa had very courteously packed himself under Mowgli's broad, bare shoulders, so that the boy was really resting in a living arm-chair. "Even to the scales of the eyes it is perfect," said Mowgli, under his breath, playing with the old skin. "Strange to see the covering of one's own head at one's own feet." "Aye, but I lack feet," said Kaa, "and since this is the custom of all my people, I do not find it strange. Does thy skin never feel old and harsh?" "Well, then I go and wash, Flathead. But it is true, in the great heats I have wished I could slough my skin without pain and run skinless." "I wash, and also I take off my skin. How looks the new coat?" Mowgli ran his hand down the diagonal checkerings of the immense back. "The turtle is harder backed, but not so gay," he said judgmatically. "The frog, my name-bearer, is more gay, but not so hard. It is very beautiful to see, like the mottling in the mouth of a lily. It needs water. A new skin never comes to full color before the first bath. Let us go bathe." "I will carry thee," said Mowgli, and he stooped down, laughing, to lift the middle section of Kaa's great body, just where the barrel was thickest. A man might just as well have tried to heave up a 2-foot water main, and Kaa lay still, puffing with quiet amusement. Then the regular evening game began, the boy in the flush of his great strength, and the python in his sumptuous new skin, standing up one against the other for a wrestling match, a trial of eye and strength. Of course, Kaa could have crushed a dozen Mowglis if he had let himself go, but he played carefully, and never loosed 1/10 of his power. Ever since Mowgli was strong enough to endure a little rough handling, Kaa had taught him this game, and it suppled his limbs as nothing else could. Sometimes Mowgli would stand lapped almost to his throat in Kaa's shifting coils, striving to get one arm free and catch him by the throat. Then Kaa would give way limply, and Mowgli, with both quick-moving feet, would try to cramp the purchase of that huge tail as it flung backward, feeling for a rock or a stump. They would rock to and fro, head to head, each waiting for his chance, till the beautiful statue-like group melted in a whirl of black and yellow coils and struggling legs and arms, to rise up again and again. "Now, now, now," said Kaa, making feints with his head that even Mowgli's quick hand could not turn aside. "Look, I touch thee here, little brother, here and here. Are thy hands numb? Here again." The game always ended in one way, with a straight, driving blow of the head that knocked the boy over and over. Mowgli could never learn the guard for that lightning lunge, and, as Kaa said, there was not the least use in trying. "Good hunting," Kaa grunted at last, and Mowgli, as usual, was shot away 6 yards, gasping and laughing. He rose with his fingers full of grass and followed Kaa to the wise snake's pet bathing place, a deep, pitchy black pool surrounded with rocks, and made interesting by the sunken tree stumps. The boy slipped in, jungle fashion, without a sound, and dived across, rose too without a sound, and turned on his back, his arms behind his head, watching the moon rising above the rocks and breaking up a reflection in the water with his toes. Kaa's diamond-shaped head cut the pool like a razor, and came out to rest on Mowgli's shoulder. They lay still, soaking luxuriously in the cool water. "It is very good," said Mowgli at last, sleepily. "Now, In the man-pack at this hour, as I remember, they laid down upon hard pieces of wood in the inside of a mud-trap, and, having carefully shut out all the clean winds, drew foul cloth over their heavy heads, and made evil songs through their noses. It is better in the jungle. A hurrying cobra slipped down over a rock and drank, gave them "good hunting," and went away. "Shh," said Kaa, as though he had suddenly remembered something. "So the jungle gives thee all that thou hast ever desired, little brother?" "Not all," said Mowgli, laughing, "else there would be a new and strong Shere Khan to kill once a moon. Now I could kill with my own hands, asking no help of buffaloes. And also I have wished the sun to shine in the middle of the rains, and the rains to cover the sun in the deep of summer. And also I have never gone empty, but I wished that I had killed a goat. And also I have never killed a goat, but I wished it had been a buck, nor buck, but I wished it had been a nilgai. But thus do we feel, all of us." "Thou hast no other desire?" the big snake demanded. "What more can I wish? I have the jungle and the favor of the jungle. Is there more anywhere between sunrise and sunset?" "Now the cobra said," Kaa began. "What cobra? He that went away just now said nothing. He was hunting." "It was another." "Hast thou many dealings with the poison people? I give them their own path. They carry death in the foretooth, and that is not good, for they are so small. But what hood is this thou hast spoken with?" Kaa rolled slowly in the water, like a steamer in a beam sea. 3 or 4 moons since," said he, "I hunted in Cold Lairs, which place thou hast not forgotten. And the thing I hunted fled shrieking past the tanks, and to that house whose side I once broke for thy sake, and ran into the ground. But the people of Cold Lairs do not live in burrows." Mowgli knew that Kaa was talking of the monkey people. "This thing was not living, but seeking to live," Kaa replied, with a quiver of his tongue. "He ran into a burrow that led very far. I followed, and having killed, I slept. When I waked, I went forward." "Under the earth?" "Even so, coming at last upon a white hood, a white cobra, who spoke of things beyond my knowledge, and showed me many things I had never before seen." "New game? Was it good hunting?" Mowgli turned quickly on his side. "It was no game, and would have broken all my teeth. But the White Hood said that a man, he spoke as one that knew the breed, that a man would give the breath under his ribs for only the sight of those things." "We will look," said Mowgli. "I now remember that I was once a man." "Slowly, slowly. It was haste killed the yellow snake that ate the sun. We two spoke together under the earth, and I spoke of thee, naming thee as a man," said the White Hood. "And he is indeed as old as the jungle. It is long since I have seen a man. Let him come, and he shall see all these things, for the least of which very many men would die." "That must be a new game. And yet the poison people do not tell us when game is afoot. They are an unfriendly folk." "It is not game. It is, I cannot say what it is." "We will go there. I have never seen a White Hood, and I wish to see the other things. Did he kill them?" "They are all dead things. He says he is the keeper of them all." "Ah, as a wolf stands above meat he has taken to his own lair. Let us go." Mowgli swam to bank, rolled on the grass to dry himself, and the two set off for Cold Lairs, the deserted city of which you may have heard. Mowgli was not the least afraid of the monkey people in those days, but the monkey people had the liveliest horror of Mowgli. Their tribes, however, were raiding in the jungle, and so Cold Lairs stood empty and silent in the moonlight. Kaa led up to the ruins of the Queen's pavilion that stood on the terrace, slipped over the rubbish, and dived down the half-choked staircase that went underground from the center of the pavilion. Mowgli gave the snake call. "We be of one blood, ye and I," and followed on his hands and knees. They crawled a long distance down a sloping passage that turned and twisted several times, and at last came to where the root of some great tree, growing 30 feet overhead, had forced out a solid stone in the wall. They crept through the gap, and found themselves in a large vault, whose domed roof had been also broken away by tree roots, so that a few streaks of light dropped down into the darkness. "A safe lair," said Mowgli, rising to his firm feet. "But over far to visit daily. And now what do we see?" "Am I nothing?" said a voice in the middle of the vault. And Mowgli saw something white move till, little by little, there stood up the hugest cobra he had ever set eyes on, a creature nearly 8 feet long and bleached by being in darkness to an old ivory white. Even the spectacle marks of his spread hood had faded to faint yellow. His eyes were as red as rubies, and altogether he was most wonderful. "Good hunting," said Mowgli, who carried his manners with his knife, and that never left him. "What of my city?" said the white cobra, without answering the greeting. "What of the walled city, the city of 100 elephants and 20,000 horses and cattle past counting, the city of the king of 20 kings? I grow deaf here, and it is long since I heard their war gongs." "The jungle is above our heads," said Mowgli. "I know only Hathi and his sons among elephants. Bagheera has slain all the horses in one village, and what is a king?" "I told thee," said Kaa softly to the cobra. "I told thee 4 moons ago that thy city was not. The great city of the forest, whose gates are guarded by the king's towers, can never pass. They builded it before my father's father came from the egg, and it shall endure when my son's sons are as white as I. Salamdi, son of Chandrabija, son of Vieja, son of Yegasuri, made it in the days of Bapa Rawal. Whose cattle are ye?" "It is a lost trail," said Mowgli, turning to Kaa. "I know not his talk." "Nor I. He is very old. Father of cobras, there is only the jungle here, as it has been since the beginning." "Then who is he?" said the white cobra, sitting down before me, unafraid, knowing not the name of the king, talking our talk through a man's lips. "Who is he with the knife and the snake's tongue?" "Mowgli they call me," was the answer. "I am of the jungle. The wolves are my people, and Kaa here is my brother. Father of cobras, who art thou?" "I am the warden of the king's treasure. Kurun Raja builded the stone above me in the days when my skin was dark, that I might teach death to those who came to steal." Then they let down the treasure through the stone, and I heard the song of the Brahmins, my masters. Said Mowgli to himself. "I have dealt with one Brahmin already in the man-pack, and I know what I know. Evil comes here in a little. 5 times since I came here has the stone been lifted, but always to let down more and never to take away. There are no riches like these riches, the treasures of 100 kings. But it is long and long since the stone was last moved, and I think that my city has forgotten." "There is no city. Look up. Yonder are roots of the great trees tearing the stones apart. Trees and men do not grow together," Kaa insisted. "Twice and thrice have men found their way here," the white cobra answered savagely. "But they never spoke till I came upon them groping in the dark, and then they cried only a little time. But ye come with lies, man and snake both, and would have me believe the city is not, and that my war-chip ends. Little do men change in the years, but I change never. Till the stone is lifted and the Brahmins come down singing the songs that I know, and feed me with warm milk, and take me to the light again, I, and no other, am the warden of the king's treasure. The city is dead, ye say, and here are the roots of the trees? Stoop down, then, and take what ye will. Earth has no treasure like to these. Man with the snake's tongue, if thou canst go alive by the way that thou hast entered at, the lesser kings will be thy servants." "Again the trail is lost," said Mowgli coolly. "Can any jackal have burrowed so deep and bitten this great White Hood? He is surely mad. Father of cobras, I see nothing here to take away. By the gods of the sun and moon, it is the madness of death upon the boy," hissed the cobra. "Before thine eyes close, I will allow thee this favor. Look thou, and see what man has never seen before." "They do not well in the jungle who speak to Mowgli of favors," said the boy between his teeth. "But the dark changes all, as I know. I will look, if that please thee." He stared with puckered-up eyes round the vault, and then lifted up from the floor a handful of something that glittered. "Oh-ho," said he, "this is like the stuff they play with in the man-pack, only this is yellow and the other was brown." He let the gold pieces fall and moved forward. The floor of the vault was buried some 5 or 6 feet deep in coined gold and silver that had burst from the sacks it had been originally stored in, and in the long years the metal had packed and settled as sand packs at low tide. On it and in it, and rising through it, as wrecks lift through the sand, were jewelled elephant howdahs of embossed silver, studded with plates of hammered gold, and adorned with carbuncles and turquoises. There were palanquins and litters for carrying queens, framed and braced with silver and enamel, with jade-handled poles and amber curtain rings. There were golden candlesticks hung with pierced emeralds that quivered on the branches. There were studded images, 5 feet high, of forgotten gods, silver with jewelled eyes. There were coats of mail, gold inlaid on steel and fringed with rotted and blackened seed pearls. There were helmets, crested and beaded with pigeon's blood rubies. There were shields of lacquer, of tortoise-shell and rhinoceros hide, strapped and bossed with red gold and set with emeralds at the edge. There were sheaves of diamond-hilted swords, daggers, and hunting knives. There were golden sacrificial bowls and ladles, and portable altars of a shape that never see the light of day. There were jade cups and bracelets. There were incense burners, combs and pots for perfume, henna, and eye powder, all in embossed gold. There were nose rings, armlets, headbands, finger rings, and girdles past any counting. There were belts, 7 fingers broad, of square-cut diamonds and rubies, and wooden boxes, trebly clamped with iron, from which the wood had fallen away in powder, showing the pile of uncut star sapphires, opals, cat's eyes, sapphires, rubies, diamonds, emeralds, and garnets within. The White Cobra was right. No mere money would begin to pay the value of this treasure, the sifted pickings of centuries of war, plunder, trade, and taxation. The coins alone were priceless, leaving out of count all the precious stones, and the dead weight of the gold and silver alone might be 200 or 300 tons. Every native ruler in India today, however poor, has a hoard to which he is always adding. And though once in a long while some enlightened prince may send off 40 or 50 bullock cart loads of silver to be exchanged for government securities, the bulk of them keep their treasure and the knowledge of it very closely to themselves. But Mowgli naturally did not understand what these things meant. The knives interested him a little, but they did not balance so well as his own, and so he dropped them. At last he found something really fascinating laid on the front of a howdah, half buried in the coins. It was a 3-foot ankus, or elephant goad, something like a small boat-hook. The top was one round shining ruby, and 12 inches of the handle below it was studded with rough turquoises close together, giving a most satisfactory grip. Below them was a rim of jade with a flower pattern running round it. Only the leaves were emeralds, and the blossoms were rubies sunk in the cool green stone. The rest of the handle was a shaft of pure ivory, while the point, the spike and hook, was gold inlaid steel with pictures of elephant catching, and the pictures attracted Mowgli, who saw that they had something to do with his friend Hathi the Silent. The White Cobra had been following him closely. "Is this not worth dying to behold?" he said. "Have I not done thee a great favor?" "I do not understand," said Mowgli. "The things are hard and cold, and by no means good to eat. But this," he lifted the ankus, "I desire to take away, that I may see it in the sun. Thou sayest they are all thine? Wilt thou give it to me, and I will bring thee frogs to eat?" The White Cobra fairly shook with evil delight. "Assuredly I will give it," he said. "All that is here I will give thee, till thou goest away." "But I go now. This place is dark and cold, and I wish to take the thorn-pointed thing to the jungle." "Look by thy foot. What is that there?" Mowgli picked up something white and smooth. "It is the bone of a man's head," he said quietly. "And here are 2 more. They came to take the treasure away many years ago. I spoke to them in the dark, and they lay still. But what do I need of this that is called treasure? If thou wilt give me the ankus to take away, it is good hunting. If not, it is good hunting none the less. I do not fight with the poison people, and I was also taught the master word of thy tribe. There is but one master word here. It is mine." Kaa flung himself forward with blazing eyes. "Who bade me bring the man?" he hissed. "I, surely," the old cobra lisped. "It is long since I have seen man, and this man speaks our tongue." "But there was no talk of killing. How can I go to the jungle and say that I have led him to his death?" said Kaa. "I talk not of killing till the time. And as to thy going or not going, there is the hole in the wall. Peace now, thou fat monkey-killer. I have but to touch thy neck, and the jungle will know thee no longer. Never man came here that went away with the breath under his ribs. I am the warden of the treasure of the king's city." "But, thou white worm of the dark, I tell thee there is neither king nor city. The jungle is all about us," cried Kaa. "There is still the treasure. But this can be done. Wait a while, Kaa of the rocks, and see the boy run. There is room for great sport here. Life is good. Run to and fro a while, and make sport, boy." Mowgli put his hand on Kaa's head quietly. "The white thing has dealt with men of the man-pack until now. He does not know me," he whispered. "He has asked for this hunting. Let him have it." Mowgli had been standing with the ankus held point down. He flung it from him quickly, and it dropped crossways just behind the great snake's hood, pinning him to the floor. In a flash, Kaa's weight was upon the writhing body, paralyzing it from hood to tail. The red eyes burned, and the 6 spare inches of the head struck furiously right and left. "Kill," said Kaa, as Mowgli's hand went to his knife. "No," he said, as he drew the blade. "I will never kill again save for food. But look you, Kaa." He caught the snake behind the hood, forced the mouth open with the blade of the knife, and showed the terrible poison fangs of the upper jaw lying black and withered in the gum. The white cobra had outlived his poison, as a snake will. "Thu!" "It is dried up," said Mowgli, and motioning Kaa away, he picked up the ankus, setting the white cobra free. "The king's treasure needs a new warden," he said gravely. "Thu, thou hast not done well. Run to and fro and make sport, Thu." "I am ashamed. Kill me," hissed the white cobra. "There has been too much talk of killing. We will go now. I take the thorn-pointed thing, Thu, because I have fought and worsted thee. See, then, that the thing does not kill thee at last. It is death. Remember, it is death. There is enough in that thing to kill the men of all my city. Not long wilt thou hold it, jungle man, nor he who takes it from thee. They will kill and kill and kill for its sake. My strength is dried up, but the ankus will do my work. It is death. It is death. It is death." Mowgli crawled out through the hole into the passage again, and the last that he saw was the white cobra striking furiously with his harmless fangs at the stolid golden faces of the gods that lay on the floor, and hissing, "It is death." They were glad to get to the light of day once more, and when they were back in their own jungle, and Mowgli made the ankus glitter in the morning light, he was almost as pleased as though he had found a bunch of new flowers to stick in his hair. "This is brighter than Bagheera's eyes," he said delightedly, as he twirled the ruby. "I will show it to him. But what did the Thu mean when he talked of death?" "I cannot say. I am sorrowful to my tail's tail that he felt not thy knife. There is always evil at cold lairs, above ground or below. But now I am hungry. Dost thou hunt with me this dawn?" said Kaa. "No, Bagheera must see this thing. Good hunting." Mowgli danced off, flourishing the great ankus and stopping from time to time to admire it, till he came to that part of the jungle Bagheera chiefly used, and found him drinking after a heavy kill. Mowgli told him all his adventures from beginning to end, and Bagheera sniffed at the ankus between whiles. When Mowgli came to the white cobra's last words, the panther purred approvingly. "Then the White Hood spoke the thing which is?" Mowgli asked quickly. "I was born in the king's cages at Udaipur, and it is in my stomach that I know some little of man. Very many men would kill thrice in a night for the sake of that one big red stone alone. But the stone makes it heavy to the hand. My little bright knife is better, and, see, the red stone is not good to eat. Then why would they kill? Mowgli, go thou and sleep. Thou hast lived among men, and I remember. Men kill because they are not hunting, for idleness and pleasure. Wake again, Bagheera. For what use was this thorn-pointed thing made? Bagheera half opened his eyes. He was very sleepy, with a malicious twinkle. It was made by men to thrust into the head of the sons of Hathi, so that the blood should pour out. I have seen the like in the street of Udaipur before our cages. That thing has tasted the blood of many such as Hathi. But why do they thrust into the heads of elephants? To teach them man's law. Having neither claws nor teeth, men make these things, and worse. Always more blood when I come near, even to the things the Man-Pack have made, said Mowgli disgustedly. He was getting a little tired of the weight of the ankus. If I had known this, I would not have taken it. First it was Messua's blood on the thongs, and now it is Hathi's. I will use it no more. Look. The ankus flew sparkling and buried itself point down 30 yards away between the trees. So my hands are clean of death, said Mowgli, rubbing his palms on the fresh, moist earth. The Thu said death would follow me. He is old and white and mad. White or black, or death or life, I am going to sleep, little brother. I cannot hunt all night and howl all day, as do some folk. Bagheera went off to a hunting lair that he knew, about 2 miles off. Mowgli made an easy way for himself up a convenient tree, knotted 3 or 4 creepers together, and in less time than it takes to tell, was swinging in a hammock 50 feet above ground. Though he had no positive objection to strong daylight, Mowgli followed the custom of his friends and used it as little as he could. When he waked among the very loud-voiced peoples that live in the trees, it was twilight once more, and he had been dreaming of the beautiful pebbles he had thrown away. At least I will look at the thing again, he said, and slid down a creeper to the earth. But Bagheera was before him. Mowgli could hear him snuffing in the half-light. "Where is the thorn-pointed thing?" cried Mowgli. "A man has taken it. Here is the trail." "Now we shall see whether the Thu spoke truth. If the pointed thing is death, that man will die. Let us follow." "Kill first," said Bagheera. "An empty stomach makes a careless eye. Men go very slowly, and the jungle is wet enough to hold the lightest mark." They killed as soon as they could, but it was nearly 3 hours before they finished their meat and drink and buckled down to the trail. The jungle people know that nothing makes up for being hurried over your meals. "Think you the pointed thing will turn in the man's hand and kill him?" Mowgli asked. "The Thu said it was death." "We shall see when we find," said Bagheera, trotting with his head low. "It is Singlefoot." He meant that there was only one man, and the weight of the thing has pressed his heel far into the ground. "Aye, this is as clear as summer lightning," Mowgli answered, and they fell into the quick, choppy trail trot in and out through the checkers of the moonlight, following the marks of those 2 bare feet. "Now he runs swiftly," said Mowgli. "The toes are spread apart." They went on over some wet ground. "Now why does he turn aside here?" "Wait," said Bagheera, and flung himself forward with one superb bound as far as ever he could. The first thing to do when a trail ceases to explain itself is to cast forward without leaving your own confusing footmarks on the ground. Bagheera turned as he landed and faced Mowgli, crying, "Here comes another trail to meet him. It is a smaller foot, this second trail, and the toes turn inward." Then Mowgli ran up and looked. "It is the foot of a Gond hunter," he said. "Look, here he dragged his bow on the grass. That is why the first trail turned aside so quickly. Big Foot hid from Little Foot." "That is true," said Bagheera. "Now, lest by crossing each other's tracks we foul the signs, let each take one trail. I am Big Foot, little brother, and thou art Little Foot, the Gond." Bagheera leaped back to the original trail, leaving Mowgli stooping above the curious narrow track of the wild little man of the woods. "Now," said Bagheera, moving step by step along the chain of footprints, "I, Bigfoot, turn aside here. Now I hide me behind a rock and stand still, not daring to shift my feet. Cry thy trail, little brother." "Now I, Littlefoot, come to the rock," said Mowgli, running up his trail. "Now I sit down under the rock, leaning upon my right hand and resting my bow between my toes. I wait long, for the mark of my feet is deep here."
"I also,"
said Bagheera, hidden behind the rock.
"I wait, resting the end of the thorn-pointed thing upon a stone. It slips, for here is a scratch upon the stone. Cry thy trail, little brother."
"1, 2 twigs and a big branch are broken here," said Mowgli in an undertone. "Now how shall I cry that? Ah, it is plain now. I, Littlefoot, go away making noises and tramplings so that Bigfoot may hear me." He moved away from the rock pace by pace among the trees, his voice rising in the distance as he approached a little cascade. "I go far away, to where the noise of falling water covers my noise, and here I wait. Cry thy trail, Bagheera, Bigfoot." The panther had been casting in every direction to see how Bigfoot's trail led away from behind the rock. Then he gave tongue.
"I come from behind the rock upon my knees, dragging the thorn-pointed thing. Seeing no one, I run. I, Bigfoot, run swiftly. The trail is clear. Let each follow his own. I run."
Bagheera swept on along the clearly marked trail, and Mowgli followed the steps of the Gond. For some time there was silence in the jungle.
"Where art thou, Littlefoot?"
cried Bagheera. Mowgli's voice answered him not 50 yards to the right.
Said the panther with a deep cough. "The two run side by side, drawing nearer."
They raced on another half-mile, always keeping about the same distance, till Mowgli, whose head was not so close to the ground as Bagheera's, cried, "They have met! Good hunting, look! Here stood Littlefoot, with his knee on a rock, and yonder is Bigfoot indeed." Not 10 yards in front of them, stretched across a pile of broken rocks, lay the body of a villager of the district, a long, small-feathered Gond arrow through his back and breast.
"Was the Thu so old and so mad, little brother?" said Bagheera gently. "Here is one death, at least."
"Follow on. But where is the drinker of elephant's blood, the red-eyed thorn?"
"Littlefoot has it, perhaps. It is Singlefoot again now."
The single trail of a light man who had been running quickly and bearing a burden on his left shoulder held on round a long, low spur of dried grass, where each footfall seemed, to the sharp eyes of the trackers, marked in hot iron. Neither spoke till the trail ran up to the ashes of a campfire hidden in a ravine.
"Again," said Bagheera, checking as though he had been turned into stone. The body of a little wizened Gond lay with its feet in the ashes, and Bagheera looked inquiringly at Mowgli.
"That was done with a bamboo," said the boy, after one glance. "I have used such a thing among the buffaloes when I served in the man-pack. The father of cobras, I am sorrowful that I made a jest of him, knew the breed well, as I might have known. Said I not that men kill for idleness?"
"Indeed, they killed for the sake of the red and blue stones," Bagheera answered. "Remember, I was in the king's cages at Udaipur."
1, 2, 3, 4 tracks, said Mowgli, stooping over the ashes. 4 tracks of men with shod feet. They do not go so quickly as Gonds. Now, what evil had the little woodman done to them? See, they talked together, all 5, standing up before they killed him. Bagheera, let us go back. My stomach is heavy in me, and yet it heaves up and down like an oriole's nest at the end of a branch.
"It is not good hunting to leave game afoot. Follow," said the panther. "Those 8 shod feet have not gone far."
No more was said for fully an hour as they worked up the broad trail of the 4 men with shod feet. It was clear, hot daylight now, and Bagheera said, "I smell smoke." "Men are always more ready to eat than to run," Mowgli answered, trotting in and out between the low scrub bushes of the new jungle they were exploring. Bagheera, a little to his left, made an indescribable noise in his throat.
"Here is one that has done with feeding," said he.
A tumbled bundle of gay-coloured clothes lay under a bush, and round it was some spilt flour. "That was done by the bamboo again," said Mowgli. "See, that white dust is what men eat. They have taken the kill from this one, he carried their food, and given him for a kill to chill the kite."
"It is the 3rd," said Bagheera.
"I will go with new big frogs to the father of cobras and feed him fat," said Mowgli to himself. "The drinker of elephant's blood is death himself. But still I do not understand." "Follow," said Bagheera. They had not gone half a mile further when they heard Ko, the crow, singing the death song in the top of a tamarisk, under whose shade 3 men were lying. A half-dead fire smoked in the center of the circle, under an iron plate which held a blackened and burned cake of unleavened bread. Close to the fire, and blazing in the sunshine, lay the ruby and turquoise ankus. "The thing works quickly. All ends here," said Bagheera. "How did these die, Mowgli? There is no mark on any." A jungle dweller gets to learn by experience as much as many doctors know of poisonous plants and berries. Mowgli sniffed the smoke that came up from the fire, broke off a morsel of the blackened bread, tasted it, and spat it out again. "Apple of death!" he coughed. "The first must have made it ready in the food for these, who killed him, having first killed the Gond." "Good hunting indeed. The kills follow close," said Bagheera. Apple of death is what the jungle call thorn apple, or datura, the readiest poison in all India. "What now?" said the panther. "Must thou and I kill each other for yonder red-eyed slayer?" "Can it speak?" said Mowgli in a whisper. "Did I do it a wrong when I threw it away? Between us two it can do no wrong, for we do not desire what men desire. If it be left here, it will assuredly continue to kill men one after another as fast as nuts fall in a high wind. I have no love to men, but even I would not have them die 6 in a night." "What matter? They are only men. They killed one another and were well pleased," said Bagheera. "That first little woodman hunted well." "They are cubs none the less, and a cub will drown himself to bite the moon's light on the water. The fault was mine," said Mowgli, who spoke as though he knew all about everything. "I will never again bring into the jungle strange things, not though they be as beautiful as flowers. This," he handled the ankus gingerly, "goes back to the father of the cobras. But first we must sleep, and we cannot sleep near these sleepers. Also we must bury him, lest he run away and kill another 6. Dig me a hole under that tree." "But, little brother," said Bagheera, moving off to the spot, "I tell thee it is no fault of the blood drinker. The trouble is with men." "All one," said Mowgli. "Dig the hole deep. When we wake I will take him up and carry him back." 2 nights later, as the white cobra sat mourning in the darkness of the vault, ashamed and robbed and alone, the turquoise ankus whirled through the hole in the wall and clashed on the floor of golden coins. "Father of cobras," said Mowgli. He was careful to keep the other side of the wall. "Get thee a young and ripe one of thine own people to help thee guard the king's treasure, so that no man may come away alive any more." "Aha! It returns, then. I said the thing was death. How comes it that thou art still alive?" the old cobra mumbled, twining lovingly around the ankus haft. "By the bull that bought me, I do not know. That thing has killed 6 times in a night. Let him go out no more." The Song of the Little Hunter. Ere more the peacock flutters, ere the monkey people cry, ere chill the kite swoops down a furlong sheer, through the jungle very softly flits a shadow and a sigh. He is fear, O little hunter, he is fear. Very softly down the glade runs a waiting, watching shade, and the whisper spreads and widens far and near. And the sweat is on thy brow, for he passes even now. He is fear, O little hunter, he is fear. Ere the moon has climbed the mountain, ere the rocks are ribbed with light, when the downward dipping trails are dank and drear, comes a breathing hard behind thee, snuffle, snuffle through the night. It is fear, O little hunter, it is fear. On thy knees and draw the bow, bid the shrilling arrow go, in the empty mocking thicket plunge the spear. But thy hands are loosed and weak, and the blood has left thy cheek. It is fear, O little hunter, it is fear. When the heat cloud sucks the tempest, when the slivered pine trees fall, when the blinding blaring rain squalls lash and veer, through the war gongs of the thunder rings a voice more loud than all. It is fear, O little hunter, it is fear. Now the spates are banked and deep, now the footless boulders leap, now the lightning shows each little leaf-rib clear. But thy throat is shut and dried, and thy heart against thy side hammers fear, O little hunter, this is fear. Quaiquern. The people of the eastern ice, they are melting like the snow. They beg for coffee and sugar, they go where the white men go. The people of the western ice, they learn to steal and fight. They sell their furs to the trading post, they sell their souls to the white. The people of the southern ice, they trade with the whalers' crew. Their women have many ribbons, but their tents are torn and few. But the people of the elder ice, beyond the white man's ken, their spears are made of the narwhal horn, and they are the last of the men. Translation. Quaiquern. He has opened his eyes. Look. Put him in the skin again. He will be a strong dog. On the 4th month we will name him. For whom? Said Amarak. Kadlu's eyes rolled round the skin-lined snow-house, till it fell on 14-year-old Kotuko, sitting on the sleeping bench, making a button out of walrus ivory. Name him for me, said Kotuko with a grin. I shall need him one day. Kadlu grinned back, till his eyes were almost buried in the fat of his flat cheeks, and nodded to Amarak, while the puppy's fierce mother whined to see her baby wriggling far out of reach in the little sealskin pouch hung above the warmth of the blubber lamp. Kotuko went on with his carving, and Kadlu threw a rolled bundle of leather dog harnesses into a tiny little room that opened from one side of the house, slipped off his heavy deerskin hunting suit, put it into a whalebone net that hung above another lamp, and dropped down on the sleeping bench to whittle at a piece of frozen seal meat till Amarak, his wife, should bring the regular dinner of boiled meat and blood soup. He had been out since early dawn at the seal holes, 8 miles away, and had come home with 3 big seal. Halfway down the long, low snow passage or tunnel that led to the inner door of the house, you could hear snappings and yelpings as the dogs of his sleigh team, released from the day's work, scuffled for warm places. When the yelpings grew too loud, Kotuko lazily rolled off the sleeping bench and picked up a whip with an 18-inch handle of springy whalebone and 25 feet of heavy plaited thong. He dived into the passage, where it sounded as though all the dogs were eating him alive. But that was no more than their regular grace before meals. When he crawled out at the far end, 6 furry heads followed him with their eyes as he went to a sort of gallows of whale jawbones from which the dog's meat was hung, split off the frozen stuff in big lumps with a broad-headed spear, and stood, his whip in one hand and the meat in the other. Each beast was called by name, the weakest first, and woe betide any dog that moved out of his turn, for the tapering lash would shoot out like thonged lightning and flick away an inch or so of hair and hide. Each beast growled, snapped, choked once over his portion, and hurried back to the protection of the passage, while the boys stood upon the snow under the blazing northern lights and dealt out justice. The last to be served was the big black leader of the team, who kept order when the dogs were harnessed, and to him Kotuko gave a double allowance of meat, as well as an extra crack of the whip. "Ah," said Kotuko, coiling up the lash, "I have a little one over the lamp that will make a great many howlings. Sarpok, get in." He crawled back over the huddled dogs, dusted the dry snow from his furs with the whalebone beaters that Amarak kept by the door, tapped the skin-lined roof of the house to shake off any icicles that might have fallen from the dome of snow above, and curled up on the bench. The dogs in the passage snored and whined in their sleep. The boy-baby in Amarak's deep fur hood kicked and choked and gurgled, and the mother of the newly named puppy lay at Kotuko's side, her eyes fixed on the bundle of sealskin, warm and safe above the broad yellow flame of the lamp. And all this happened far away to the north, beyond Labrador, beyond Hudson Strait, where the great tides heave the ice about, north of Melville Peninsula, north even of the narrow Fury and Hecla Straits, on the north shore of Baffinland, where Bylot's Island stands above the ice of Lancaster Sound like a pudding bowl wrong side up. North of Lancaster Sound there is little we know anything about, except North Devon and Ellesmere Land. But even there live a few scattered people, next door, as it were, to the very pole. Kadlu was an Inuit, what you call an Eskimo, and his tribe, some 30 persons all told, belonged to the Tununirmiut, the country lying at the back of something. In the maps that desolate coast is written Navy Board Inlet, but the Inuit name is best, because the country lies at the very back of everything in the world. For 9 months of the year there is only ice, snow, and gale after gale, with a cold that no one can realize who has never seen the thermometer even at 0. For 6 months of those 9 it is dark, and that is what makes it so horrible. In the 3 months of summer it only freezes every other day and every night, and then the snow begins to weep off on the southerly slopes, and a few ground willows put out their woolly buds. A tiny stone crop or so makes believe to blossom. Beaches of fine gravel and rounded stones run down to the open sea, and polished boulders and streaked rocks lift up above the granulated snow. But all that is gone in a few weeks, and the wild winter locks down again on the land, while at sea the ice tears up and down the offing, jamming and ramming and splitting and hitting and pounding and grounding, till it all freezes together 10 feet thick from the land outward to deep water. In the winter, Kadlu would follow the seal to the edge of this land ice, and spear them as they came up to breathe at their blowholes. The seal must have open water to live and catch fish in, and in the deeper winter the ice would sometimes run 80 miles without a break from the nearest shore. In the spring he and his people retreated from the floes to the rocky mainland, where they put up tents of skins, and snared the seabirds or speared the young seal basking on the beaches. Later they would go south into Baffinland after the reindeer, and to get their year's store of salmon from the hundreds of streams and lakes of the interior, coming back north in September or October for the muskox hunting and the regular winter sealery. This travelling was done with dog sleighs 20 and 30 miles a day, or sometimes down the coast in big skin woman boats, when the dogs and the babies lay among the feet of the rowers, and the women sang songs as they glided from cape to cape over the glassy, cold waters. All the luxuries that the Tununirmiut knew came from the south. Driftwood for sleigh runners, rod iron for harpoon tips, steel knives, tin kettles that cooked food much better than the old soapstone affairs, flint and steel, and even matches, as well as coloured ribbons for the woman's hair, little cheap mirrors, and red cloth for the edging of deerskin dress jackets. Kadlu traded the rich, creamy, twisted narwhal horn and muskox teeth. These are just as valuable as pearls to the southern Inuit, and they, in turn, traded with the whalers and the missionary posts of Exeter and Cumberland Sounds. And so the chain went on, till a kettle picked up by a ship's cook in the Bendi Bazaar might end its days over a blubber lamp somewhere on the cool side of the Arctic Circle. Kadlu, being a good hunter, was rich in iron harpoons, snow knives, bird darts, and all the other things that make life easy up there in the great cold. And he was the head of this tribe, or, as they say, the man who knows all about it by practice. This did not give him any authority, except now and then he could advise his friends to change their hunting grounds. But Kotuko used it to domineer a little, in the lazy, fat Inuit fashion, over the other boys, when they came out at night to play ball in the moonlight, or to sing the child's song to the aurora borealis. But at 14, an Inuit feels himself a man, and Kotuko was tired of making snares for wild fowl and kit foxes, and most tired of all of helping the women to chew seal and deerskins, that supples them as nothing else can, the long day through, while the men were out hunting. He wanted to go into the quaggi, the singing house, when the hunters gathered there for their mysteries, and the angakok, the sorcerer, frightened them into the most delightful fits after the lamps were put out. And you could hear the spirit of the reindeer stamping on the roof. And when a spear was thrust out into the open black night, it came back covered with hot blood. He wanted to throw his big boots into the net with the tired air of a head of a family, and to gamble with the hunters when they dropped in of an evening and played a sort of homemade roulette with a tin pot and a nail. There were hundreds of things that he wanted to do, but the grown men laughed at him and said, "Wait till you have been in the buckle, Kotuko. Hunting is not all catching." Now that his father had named a puppy for him, things looked brighter. An Inuit does not waste a good dog on his son till the boy knows something of dog driving, and Kotuko was more than sure that he knew more than everything. If the puppy had not had an iron constitution, he would have died from overstuffing and overhandling. Kotuko made him a tiny harness with a trace to it, and hauled him all over the house floor, shouting, "Awa, ja awa," go to the right. "Choya choy, ja choya choy," go to the left. "Ohaha," stop. The puppy did not like it at all, but being fished for in this way was pure happiness beside being put to the sleigh for the first time. He just sat down on the snow and played with the seal-hide trace that ran from his harness to the pitu, the big thong in the bows of the sleigh. Then the team started, and the puppy found the heavy 10-foot sleigh running up his back and dragging him along the snow, while Kotuko laughed till the tears ran down his face. There followed days and days of the cruel whip that hisses like the wind over ice, and his companions all bit him because he did not know his work, and the harness chafed him, and he was not allowed to sleep with Kotuko any more, but had to take the coldest place in the passage. It was a sad time for the puppy. The boy learned too, as fast as the dog, though a dog sleigh is a heart-breaking thing to manage. Each beast is harnessed, the weakest nearest to the driver, by his own separate trace, which runs under his left foreleg to the main thong, where it is fastened by a sort of button and loop which can be slipped by a turn of the wrist, thus freeing one dog at a time. This is very necessary, because young dogs often get the trace between their hind legs, where it cuts to the bone, and they one and all will go visiting their friends as they run, jumping in and out among the traces. Then they fight, and the result is more mixed than a wet fishing line next morning. A great deal of trouble can be avoided by scientific use of the whip. Every Inuit boy prides himself as being a master of the long lash. But it is easy to flick at a mark on the ground, and difficult to lean forward and catch a shirking dog just behind the shoulders when the sleigh is going at full speed. If you call one dog's name for visiting and accidentally lash another, the two will fight it out at once and stop all the others. Again, if you travel with a companion and begin to talk, or by yourself and sing, the dogs will halt, turn round, and sit down to hear what you have to say. Kotuko